And of course, right now in the studio, we have another guest, a veteran broadcaster and cultural ambassador. And we're going to be talking about broadcasting and the cultural development in the new era. Welcome to the studio, Ikechukwu.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's look at broadcasting and how it has evolved in the past years in this new era. What can you say about broadcasting and its growth over the years?
Yeah, as a veteran who started off with the old school broadcasting approach, the analog days, and transformed into digital, I would say that that experience is something that is very, very, very interesting to me, because it's like you physically walked across the bridge from one era to another era, like splicing tapes and joining them together. I don't know, you guys will not even imagine how it was physically doing stuff like that, And from there to digitally, like edits, words and sound and stuff like that. So it was quite an interesting thing for me. And secondly, it kind of improved everything in the business of broadcasting, and kind of liberated broadcasting. It became an all-commerce thing that anybody can, express themselves and at the same time speak on whatever topic they want to talk about. It's not something that is kind of, restricted to a group of people or some individuals, some powerful people. Because in those days, if you remember rightly, when we have military coups in Nigeria, the broadcasting house is heavily guarded. Indeed, when I think of it in our days, with Radio Nigeria, we kind of live in a fort, especially in Lagos. You have the machine guns and all kind of military, equipment surrounding the entire radio station, and army people camped inside the radio station to protect it, because anybody can pop in and announce a takeover of the government. But these kind of things are not possible nowadays, because it's been liberalized, and at the same time, when the government wants to gag on people, all they have to do is just switch off the radio totally, and make communication impossible, that people outside will not understand what's going on. But nowadays, you cannot do that. People can protest, people can, go online, organize themselves, and take some activities, carry out some activities. So I would say that the new era is kind of a liberal setting, where people cannot be gagged anymore, and which is a very good thing.
Interesting. Interesting. Would you, comparing these two eras that you've experienced, which would you always pick over the other?
I think they all have their pros and cons, because the old era, I think, as a practitioner, it was fun, really, like dealing with audio with the analog tapes, And I remember, as a producer those days, we kind of take pride that you can really cut a tape and join it and get the exact, remove the exact mistake, and we're always proud of that, because you feel like you did a great job, and we always praise ourselves that your editing was like apt, that kind of thing. But apart from that, the new era kind of made things quite easier, and I think people are more relaxed, and you can really get exactly what you want to do, exactly the way it is, But then, apart from the technical aspect, it has also given voice to everyone. I worked in the area of community radio a lot, in Europe, even up to serving in the board of the European chapter of AMAC. And in the analog days, it was quite, difficult for, to empower everyone to do radio. So that way the community radio broadcasting, the AMAC used to produce cheap equipment for community radios to operate with. But then with the new era, of digital era, it became so easy that you can train people easily, and also design alternative apps. For instance, the apps for audio editing that are quite expensive. The AMAC technical setup have been able to produce a cheap one, a free source that broadcasters who broadcast on the community radio can adopt. So it's been the new era for me is a very good thing. I prefer that.
Interesting.
I prefer that.
All right. How much of broadcasting do you think help to form a global perception of Nigerians? Because sometimes what we hear most of the time from abroad is actually very devastating. These things are picked by the broadcasting that we do here in Nigeria. So how much of broadcasting do you think help to form these negative perceptions of Nigerians abroad?
Well, before this time, we've always blamed the powerful foreign, media for negative news and stories about Africa generally. And with this new era, because then they had the monopoly, but now that is thrown open to everyone, I guess where we have the negativity, mostly is based on what is really the actual situation in the country. Because you cannot, we're talking about broadcasting and culture, development of culture. Culture is our way of life. What we do, our daily attitude and, to life and our worldview and whatever. So you cannot give what you don't have, So when in this new era, when individuals, content producers or whatever you call them, they have to tell you what is exactly the situation in the country. So if the government is bad, if there is corruption, if there's poverty, if people are hungry, if people are protesting, and what are the reactions of the government? What role are they playing to improve the situation? These are the kind of materials they dish out. And most of the time they are negative, because that's exactly, the situation in the country. So you cannot blame people for saying things the way it is. I mean, you cannot just, paint it over easily like that, because that is the situation. So for me, my view to this whole thing is that, the government and the people of Nigeria have to work towards improving their lives, and the government should provide infrastructure for improvement, roads, electricity and water view, and then the youths, who are mostly these content producers, should be helped to get jobs, because if people are not working, they will look for other means of making money. That's why we have kidnapping. That's why we have all kind of fraudsters, internet fraudsters, or the so-called Yahoo boys, and then this very, very annoying and terrible aspect of killing people for rituals, stuff like that. These are realities, So the negativity is not due to the broadcasters. It is based on the facts that they broadcast, which are realities. So,
but again, criminality doesn't only exist in Africa or even in Nigeria alone. I mean, criminality also exists in the UK, in the US, in Australia, in Ireland. It's everywhere. And, you rarely hear some of those stories being told in their medium. And even if they do, they tend to paint it in such a way that it's not that bad. But I mean, when you hear about criminality being projected or being, told or being spoken about in some of these international mediums, I mean, you tend to see them highlight it further, buttressing how bad the situation is. Mm-hmm. They can even go as far as telling you not to tell their citizens not to travel to some certain areas in the country for fear of kidnapping. But these things happen, in their climes.
Yes, you're quite right, because there are two things I talked about here. First is the aspect of the mainstream broadcasters. The other is like the story we tell about ourselves, which is also the modern era broadcasting, where individuals can, create contents and put out there. Yes, the aspect of the mainstream, foreign outlets like CNN and what have you, BBC and the rest of them. Of course, this has been their pattern from time. They indeed, I was telling a friend once, in Finland, we were discussing, because they all follow the same pattern, no matter what country it is. In Europe, in America, they do the same thing. I used to tell them that your governments, use, Africa and Asia, parts of Asia, the so-called third world, your politicians use them as a bait they throw to their masses to avoid violence and protest and things like that. It's like, we are doing this for you and that, but look at these other guys. You are better than them because we are, working hard to make things better. That's exactly the game here. It's not that those things are not there. They are. But it has become a pattern over the years, to use Africa as a, just the same way the raw materials and every other thing is being taken from Africa, the same way Africa is being used to make their people feel good, And this is why a typical European will tell you, we are better than you. We don't do this with, but in your countries, this and that and that. The same stuff is with them, but they don't talk about it. Yes, we are right about that, But this is a pattern they have kept for over the years, and it's still carrying out, But then the way to find solution to that kind of thing is I think it's almost impossible, because it's the gain from this. It's not only from their point of view, in the kind of media they put out, but of course in other aspects, like in the total world economy, when you talk about the IMF and all the systems they put down together, it's they built these things so strong that it's difficult to get away from it. And when you try, they'll find other ways to put you down. They use your own person to put you down. Look at what is going on in some of the French West African countries today. So I mean, this is a situation that meanwhile we can't do much about, but it's a reality. I agree with you.
Interesting. Okay, so comparing the quality of broadcasting, like then in the previous era, the quality of broadcasting now that we have people that do broadcasting on different platforms through different means, we even have the AI generated content and the rest of it. How can we preserve broadcasting in this era? How can it be original? How can it still have this cultural heritage in this era, with the circumstances surrounding it, where you can actually put out whatever information out there without proper clarification, or proper vetting from the source?
I think, to be honest with you, it's gotten so haywire that it's so difficult to control. You know, in terms of fake news and what have you. I'll give you one instance. Finland, the country where I'm based, have a very they are quite proactive in everything they're doing. So years ago, they've already started thinking of introducing to the schools, even from primary school, how to detect fake news, because they know very well that it will always be there. But it's just to teach people how to know what is real and what is not real. You know, because what I find in the Nigerian circumstances, that sometimes when people meet me and say, did you hear this, and then I just go, come on, because I know I cross-check things very well, and there are ways you can do this to find out what is real, what is or what is not, what has been photoshopped, and what is AI generated. There are several ways to find these things. But do you have this like a school curriculum, from primary school, like Finland has done? Kids, because all this is open there. You have to learn how to, because they know the danger of, this kind of fake news, But that notwithstanding, like you asked, the new era broadcasting, which has been like open to everyone, is a good thing on its own, though it has its own negative aspect. Why is it a good thing? If okay, let me give you one instance. In terms of music, when I was a producer at Radio Nigeria, I had a program called Artist of the Week, and I had the opportunity to interview a lot of big Nigerian artists, people like Stephen Osito Selebe, Chief Selebe, people like Onyeko Nwenu, and Victor Waifu, and the rest of them, But then there are so many other music or musicians within the Nigerian scope that were unknown, that did great jobs. They produced a lot of good work, but nobody knew them outside the shores of Nigeria in those days. But look at what is happening today. Anywhere you go, it's Nigerian music, anywhere, just name it. Asia, Europe, America, you walk the streets. I mean, for me, it's like, okay, when I introduced Africa to Finland through broadcasting, the first ever mainstream radio program on Africa. I pioneered it, and all the vinyl records that I used for my work in those days, I ordered them directly from EMI in Lagos. So the African Music Library of that radio station was, I created the library, and from there I started when I play the music, I talk about the country, I talk about the people, I talk about their culture, and the music will be, modern pop music or traditional music of the people. So from there, I use the music to, it's a kind of music safari. I use it to travel around Africa and talk about the issues. Like that was during the era of apartheid, for instance. So when I moved to South Africa, I go into the issues of apartheid and what is being done, and what is the situation, and how do people live and how they feel, So that's the aspect of cultural development through broadcasting, because you can't separate the two. When you broadcast, you broadcast about who you are. You tell your story. So the new era has given opportunity for people to tell their stories, and that is why, there's a movement within the Igbo, both in diaspora and back home here, for people, encouraging people to tell their story, because if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And when they tell, they approach your life from a negative perspective. So it's good for you to, keep telling your stories, because that's why Chimamanda Adichie in one of her speeches talked about the dangers of one side of his story. So nobody can tell your story for you. It's your duty to do that. And that's why we encourage people, especially within the Igbo area, to tell their stories. Tell any little thing, something happens in your village, talk about it. Tell why it is like that. And, it doesn't have to be anything exceptional. Just the basic everyday thing. Tell your story so that people will understand and know who you are,
All right. It's interesting. How do you think that young broadcasters should be able to, engage its culture within the country, so much so to sell it outside, sell it in a positive manner outside? And then recently we've seen, not even recently, it has been there for a long time, the influx of culture, international media into our cultural heritage. Yeah. Sometimes it just comes in to skew it. You see young broadcasters instead of speaking their own languages, they tend to want to speak like, foreigners. Yeah. So for you, as someone who is a veteran, how do you think, I mean, you've done both sides. You know what's obtainable out there, what's obtainable here. For you, how do you think that the young broadcasting organization will be able to mitigate against the influx of foreign culture, ones that would come and railroad our own culture? And how much of that, of course, how much of strength do you think that is willed, or that should be willing for people to be able to project their own culture, to be able to sell across board?
Yeah. It's often says that culture is not stagnant, it's in flux. And that being the case, it's about what you pick and what you don't pick. I'm a very conscious person when it comes to culture. And throughout my whatever project I'm working on, I'm always coming from an African perspective. You cannot change it. It's in my head, So everything I do, like for instance, when I started my radio program in Finland, I thought clearly about what I wanted. I don't want to go into known things. People, everybody's doing. I can decide to do like, jazz and things like in those days when you had funk and reggae and stuff like that. I can talk about those things because the information is out there. But then I need to have my own place, my own thing, where I sit down and I'm the master there, and everybody will consult me, and that was what happened. So if you try to act like somebody else or build something based on somebody else's culture, I mean, you can't go far there because it's not your thing. You're faking. You are just trying to be what you're not. But when you take your Africanness, your Nigerianness, get hold of it, and every other thing happening around from whatever foreign place, you bring it in and indigenize it, in your production, you indigenize it, or you find even alternatives. Let me give you an example. One day, I was talking about the sauna. The sauna is it's a typical Finnish thing. Indeed, it's originally Finnish. The word sauna is Finnish. It's because it's quite a cold country. So their forefathers created this heating system. They used to keep themselves warm during the winter, which now spread all over the world and became kind of a modern thing that people kind of want to experience, especially in massage rooms and spa parlors and all that. But for Finnish people, it's real life. Every house has a sauna. in the countryside, if you build a home, indeed some people build a sauna before they build their house, you know. And in the olden days, that's where they give birth, you know, like way back, you know, because it's the most purified place because of the heating and all that. So the point that made me bring up this sauna thing was that I once played a song by a South African artist in those days called somebody Zikobo, you know, I can't remember the first name now, where he was singing about African sauna, you know. So the song just, you know, made me to think again. I came back, my mind brought me back to Nigeria. I was like, you know, we have a sauna in Nigeria, but we use it for medication. Like when we boil all this guava and all that for anti-malaria, and you cover yourself with a blanket and let the steam get into, you know. So I put it in and I used it to, you know, compare the Finnish sauna, and the concept of sauna is global.
Yes.
But people do it in different ways.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is that you have to take in some things from somewhere else and see it's, you know,
Fit into yours.
fit into your own setup, and that way you strengthen your own culture at the same time, rather than just, you know, taking up everything you get from outside and try to act on it as if it belongs to you. You know, it doesn't work, because anybody listening to you will know that you are faking it. It's not real.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
Yeah.
I want to say a very big thank you, Mr. Ikechukwu, for your time.
Thank
you so
It's
much.
been an eye-opener. I'm really interested with the things you've mentioned, specifically about the collaboration as to taking some things from somewhere and then infusing it into yours to improve on it, rather than basically swallowing everything from there. I really appreciate your insight for your input on today's program. Thank you again, Ikechukwu, for
My
your time.
pleasure.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.